Imagine a man who, before he dominated the octagon, conquered his own despair. Someone who walked across an entire continent, crossed unforgiving deserts, slept on the streets of Paris, and faced prison. All for a dream. And not just a dream, but the dream of becoming the most dangerous man on the planet. This is not just the story of a champion. It is the unwavering saga of Francis Ngannou. And it begins where hope was almost a luxury. Francis Ngannou's story has its roots in Bautier, a small village in the heart of Cameroon. Here there were no luxuries, not even the basics that many of us take for granted. At the age of 10, Francis's childhood was swallowed up by the brutal reality of the sand mines. Hours and hours under the scorching sun, lifting heavy bags, breathing dust that burned the lungs, the constant pain in the muscles. It was a life of deprivation, where poverty was not a temporary condition, but a daily and suffocating reality that shaped the future of every child there. A never-ending struggle for survival. But amidst this cruel reality, Francis harbored a secret, an inner flame, the dream of becoming a boxer. He saw in Mike Tyson, the ruthless knockout artist, an image of power, freedom, and recognition that seemed unattainable. How could a boy without a pair of gloves, without a gym, without a single mentor even begin? The answer was brutal. He couldn't, not here. His hunger, however, wasn't just for food. It was for a different life, for a destiny that he knew deep down was his. At the age of 26, that flame became an uncontrollable blaze. Francis made a monumental decision. He would flee. He would leave Cameroon behind, embarking on an illegal and dangerous journey to Europe. An odyssey that would take him across the dreaded Sahara Desert, where the sand mixed with the sweat and tears of so many who did not survive. Days of exhaustion, without water, without food. Nights in the bitter cold, with fear as his only company. He witnessed the despair of others, the cruelty of traffickers, the indifference of the world. Every step was a bet against death, but the dream was greater than any obstacle. He was arrested in Algeria, released, arrested again in Spain, with the false promise of a better life. A hell that lasted more than a year. But with each prison, each denied border, each closed door, the dream only became stronger, more urgent. His resilience was unshakable. Finally, he arrived in Paris, the city of light he had dreamed of. But for him, it was just a new kind of darkness. Without documents, without money, the future champion slept on the streets. The cold nights of Paris, under bridges and in parks, were his new icy reality. It was at this point in his life, in the darkness of the Parisian streets, that fate, or perhaps his own stubbornness, took over. He found a gym. And though his original dream had been boxing, MMA appeared as a new path. There, in those four sweaty, dusty walls, the world began to see what Francis Ngannou really was. A raw talent, a force of nature. His knockout power was terrifying, innate. His rise in the UFC was meteoric, a burst of raw power that shook the heavyweight division, one knockout after another. He didn't just win, he destroyed. Opponents went down in seconds, many without even realizing what hit them. The nickname, The Predator, stuck, and the fear he inspired was almost palpable before the fight even started. The MMA world was in shock. Who was this silent giant, born from such an unlikely background? He was the embodiment of pure strength, and he was coming to take his place. In 2018, Francis Ngannou, the invincible Predator, got his first shot at the heavyweight belt. Against Stipe Miocic, then considered the greatest heavyweight in the UFC, a firefighter who was also a relentless fighter. The hype was stratospheric. Many said that Miocic would not survive Francis's overwhelming power. The narrative was written, the knockout would come. But Miocic was no ordinary opponent. What happened was a shock to the world. Francis, accustomed to knockouts in seconds, faced 5 rounds of pure hell. Miocic nullified his power with superior wrestling and a ruthless strategy. Francis lost, a defeat that shattered his aura of invincibility and revealed vulnerability. He was tired, frustrated, defeated for the first time in the UFC. That moment was a blow, a bitter lesson, but one that, ironically, would become the fuel for his greatest transformation. Many would have given up, crumbled under the weight of the first defeat in the criticism. But Francis didn't. He rebuilt himself. He accepted the criticism. He learned from every mistake. He improved his ground game, his defensive wrestling, his cardio. The Predator was evolving, becoming more than just strength. He was now a complete fighting machine. His journey to redemption began with a new string of brutal knockouts, but this time more controlled, more intelligent. And then the rematch against Stipe Miocic. It wasn't just power anymore, it was technique. In a dominant, calculated performance, Francis Ngannou knocked out Stipe Miocic in the second round. The man who had slept on the streets of Paris, who had survived the desert, who had been defeated before, was now the UFC heavyweight champion. A crowning achievement not just of his raw talent, but of his indomitable will, his ability to learn, and his unwavering resilience. He had proven that true strength lies in the ability to pick yourself up and evolve. But Francis Ngannou's story didn't end with the belt. In fact, it began a new and even deeper battle, a battle for his own freedom. He, the champion of champions, wanted more. Not just more money, but more respect, more autonomy, the chance to box in other promotions, to explore new avenues for his career. He believed that fighters deserved more than the contractual terms offered. This was a fight for principles, for a better future for himself and other athletes. Negotiations with the UFC dragged on for months, full of tension and impasses. Francis was willing to give up everything, including the belt he had fought so hard to win, if it meant his freedom and the chance to open doors for others. It was an impasse unprecedented in the history of the sport. And that's exactly what he did. In a decision that shocked the MMA world, the UFC heavyweight champion chose to leave the largest mixed martial arts organization on the planet. He gave up his title, his status, to stand up for his principles and what he believed to be fair. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was a courageous one. That moment redefined what it means to be a champion, not just in the octagon, but in life. Francis Ngannou didn't just fight for titles, he fought for his voice, for his dignity, and became a symbol of empowerment for athletes around the world. A legend who refused to be silenced. From slave labor in the sand mines to the global spotlight, from the streets of Paris to the top of the world, Francis Ngannou is the embodiment of indomitable resilience, unwavering courage, and absolute belief in one's own worth. His story is not just about knockouts, but about the eternal struggle of the human spirit for something more. An inspiration, a legacy, the Predator.